I wanted to share my story and my experience in Manila, and how that place, as wild and beautiful as it is, can absolutely break a man. My story is a little different from the usual ones you hear, but I think it's still worth telling. It shows the kind of effect that this lifestyle in the Philippines can have on someone who's just looking for a little happiness, or maybe just some peace. I've been traveling to the Philippines for a few years now. Always ended up in Manila, no matter where I started. I've explored other areas, Cebu, Angeles, Davao, but something about Manila kept pulling me back in. And if you've ever been, you probably already understand why. Over the years, I've met all kinds of foreigners while hanging around in the bars and clubs there. Backpackers just passing through, guys there purely for the women. Digital nomads pretending to be millionaires, and the rare few who turn into lifelong friends. You really do meet every kind of character. I've always traveled solo, but I've never once felt truly alone on these trips. Manila is one of those places where, even if you show up without knowing a soul, by the end of the night, you're surrounded by people. Some real, some fake. But people nonetheless. Now, during one of those trips, something happened that I didn't expect. I was out doing the usual rounds, bouncing from bar to bar, soaking in the madness of Manila nightlife, when I met a guy named Rob. He was in his early 50s, originally from the UK. Said he'd been living in the Philippines for a few years, mostly in Cebu, but had recently decided to settle down in Manila for good. He told me he used to live with a Filipina girlfriend back in Cebu. Things were okay at first, but the routine wore him down. He started flying up to Manila for mini breaks, spending a few days on his own every other month just to escape. He liked Cebu, but he loved Manila. Said the energy was different. The chaos, the bars, the girls, the freedom. Eventually that love turned into an obsession. He told me he got tired of pretending to be happy in a quiet relationship and wanted something more exciting. That's when he met a girl. Someone he said was amazing. They met during one of his escape trips to Manila. She worked in a small KTV near Ermita. They hit it off quick, started seeing each other every time he flew in. Before long, they were talking about building a future together. And just like that, Rob packed up, ended things with the woman he had been living with in Cebu, and made the move to Manila permanently. Rob had only been in Manila for about a month when he and his new girlfriend decided to open a small bar together. Somewhere not far from Makati, tucked away on a quiet street that saw just enough traffic to feel promising. Of course, everything was in her name. Now, I don't think I need to explain to most people how risky that is. Foreigners can't legally own land or certain types of businesses in the Philippines, so we end up trusting the women we're with. Sometimes too much. But Rob seemed convinced it was the right move. Said it was their dream, their way to build something permanent together. He believed the bar would be a steady income stream for both of them. Something they could run together that would let him stay long-term, without constantly flying in and out for visa runs. At first, he was excited. He told me he loved the freedom of the Manila nightlife, the thrill of running a place, and the feeling of being part of it all. But he made one big mistake. The bar was located in a part of the city that just didn't have the kind of foot traffic or regular clientele he hoped for. It wasn't totally dead, but it wasn't exactly buzzing either. The bar barely made enough to cover the bills. And whatever small profit trickled in, his girlfriend would reinvest it immediately. New lights, extra karaoke machines, drinks promos. If there was anything left after that, it went straight to her family in the province. Rob started realizing he was sinking. The fantasy of bar life in Manila wasn't lining up with reality. It became a slow grind. Him footing the bills, her sending money home, and neither of them talking about how little they were actually making. I remember the first time he really opened up to me about it. We were sitting in a near-empty bar in Malate, sipping Red Horse, and he just said, "Mate, I think I fucked up." He looked tired, worn down. He told me he missed the simplicity of Cebu, the quieter life. But he couldn't go back. He had burned that bridge. Now he was stuck running a failing bar with a girlfriend who, truthfully, seemed to care more about remittances than romance. Still, he stuck it out. That's the thing about guys like Rob. They get their claws into this dream, and even when it's slipping away, they hold on tighter. He started losing weight, not by choice. I think the stress was eating at him more than the food ever could. The guy who used to light up a bar with jokes and stories had turned into someone just trying to keep the lights on. And the saddest part? She didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she did. And just didn't care. After about a year of trying to keep the bar alive, Rob finally admitted it wasn't working. The place had been bleeding money for months, and every time he tried to talk to his girlfriend about changing things or scaling down, she'd just wave him off. She still expected money to be sent to her family every week, no matter how bad things were getting. He was doing everything: managing the bar, buying stock, paying rent, utilities, salaries, and still trying to be a boyfriend. She showed up when she wanted, sat around with her friends, drank, and posed for photos like she was the owner of some booming empire. So Rob made a decision. He sat her down one night after another dead Friday shift and told her he wanted out. The stress was eating him alive. He wasn't sleeping. He wasn't even enjoying Manila anymore. To his surprise, she didn't argue. She agreed to sell the bar. But when it came time to talk money, he got hit with a slap of brutal reality. She said everything was in her name: the business license, the lease, even the equipment and furniture receipts. As far as she was concerned, Rob wasn't entitled to a single centavo. He tried to reason with her, remind her of the money he'd poured in. She just gave him that look, the one that says, "You're not in your country now." And she was right. Legally, there wasn't much he could do. He wasn't supposed to be working in the first place, and everything tied to the bar was in her name. He thought about taking her to court. But when he asked around, even the local expats told him it would be a waste of time and money. No paper trail, no contract, no leverage. Just like that, Rob walked away with nothing. I met up with him in BGC not long after that, and he looked like someone who'd just been hit by a truck. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even bitter, just drained. Like he'd finally realized the game he'd been playing. He told me he was thinking about going back to his ex in Cebu, trying to explain things, maybe patch it up. Said he knew it was a long shot, but anything was better than staying in Manila with empty pockets and a broken dream. I didn't say much. What could I say? I'd seen too many guys go through this cycle. Come to the Philippines, fall in love with the idea of building something, and lose everything because they trusted the wrong person. Rob left for Cebu the next week. I wished him luck but didn't expect much. Honestly, I figured that was the last time I'd see him. About 3 weeks later, I got a message from Rob. He was back in Manila. Things didn't go well in Cebu. His ex had moved on. New guy, new job, new life. She didn't even let him in the door. She met him at a cafe, gave him a polite smile, and told him to take care of himself. He said that moment was like a final nail in the coffin. Whatever hope he'd been holding on to had gone. So there he was, back in the city that had chewed him up once already, trying to figure out what to do next. That's when he told me he was thinking of opening another bar. I remember just staring at my phone, trying to make sense of it. I mean, here's a guy who just lost everything in his first attempt, got played hard, and now he wants to jump back in again? I met up with him that weekend. We sat in a small cafe in Makati, and he started laying it all out like it was a fresh business pitch. He said this time it'd be different. He'd learned from his mistakes. The bar would be in a better location with better foot traffic. He had a new girlfriend now, someone he met while staying in a cheap hostel in Ermita. She was younger, quieter, didn't speak much English, but according to him, she was more loyal than the last one. Said she could bring in girls, promote the bar with her friends, and help run the place. He looked excited. Hopeful even, but man, I could already see where this was heading. I tried to talk him out of it, just lightly. Told him maybe he should slow down, regroup, think of a more stable way to get back on his feet. Maybe go back home for a while, stack some cash. He shook his head. Said Manila was his home now. Said he wasn't going to give up that easily. I backed off. He was older than me, mid-50s now, and I figured he had the right to make his own decisions, even if they didn't make sense. A few weeks later, the new bar opened. I went for the opening night, and to be fair, it was decent. A good crowd showed up, mostly friends, some other expats, a few girls working the room. Everyone was drinking, laughing, ringing the bell. The energy felt alive again. I saw Rob smiling for the first time in a long while. It felt like maybe, just maybe, things might work out this time. But deep down, I wasn't convinced. The next night, I went back to check in on Rob. It was like walking into a completely different place. 3 customers, that's all. 2 of them were older guys nursing beers and barely speaking. The third was a random local who looked like he was just there to use the Wi-Fi. The girls who'd been all smiles and energy the night before, half of them weren't even there. The ones that looked tired, barely paying attention. One of them was scrolling through her phone behind the bar. Another sat on a stool picking at her nails. I stayed for maybe 2 drinks and left early. The vibe was dead. From then on, I'd pop in every few days just to check up on Rob. But it was always the same story. A few people here and there, but never the crowd he needed to keep things going. And Rob? Man, he was slipping fast. He'd already started drinking again. He was back to knocking down shots before the sun even set. I'd show up and he'd be 2 or 3 beers in, yelling for the girls to look happy or smile more, even if no one was around. He kept saying it was just a slow start, that things would pick up once word got around, that his girlfriend was working on some flyers, that the bar next door was going to start sending overflow traffic. But nothing changed. I'd seen it before. You can't run a bar on hope alone. One night I came in and he looked worse than usual. Eyes sunken, shirt wrinkled, reeking of gin. He waved me over with this sad little smile, said we needed to talk. He started by telling me they were behind on rent already. Only 2 weeks in. He'd maxed out his last credit card helping the bar get started. The girl he was with? She was already talking about other options for money. And then he told me something that caught me completely off guard. A guy had walked by earlier, saw his girlfriend out front trying to get customers in, and straight up asked if she could go with him for the night. And she agreed. Rob said she came inside and asked him quietly if it was okay. Said they really needed the money and it would just be short time. Rob looked at her, looked around at the empty bar, and told her to go. I didn't even know what to say to that. He shrugged and said, "Gotta eat, man." That's when I realized this wasn't about business anymore. Rob had crossed into survival mode. The hope he had just a few weeks ago, it was gone. Now it was just desperation. That bar was supposed to be his comeback, his second chance. Now it was just another sinking ship. I still tried to show up once in a while. I didn't want to abandon the guy completely, even if I couldn't do much to help. I'd drop by for a beer or two, toss the girls a few lady drinks just to keep the mood from dying out completely, but it always felt forced. They'd sit there smiling politely, sipping slowly like it was some kind of routine. No flirting, no energy, just people going through the motions. What hit me hardest was seeing how much Rob had changed. When we first met, he was upbeat, funny, the kind of guy that made other people loosen up. Now he was just hollow. I'd walk in and find him already halfway drunk, slouched behind the bar, staring into space. If I asked how things were going, he'd put on this fake smile and say, "We're getting there." But you could tell he didn't even believe it anymore. One night, I showed up a little later than usual. The place was practically empty, just me and a couple of bored girls who barely looked up when I sat down. Rob came over, clearly already hammered, and sat beside me. He leaned in and said, "You know what, man? I think I screwed up. Again." Then he laughed. Not the good kind. The tired, broken kind. Said he thought maybe the location was wrong, maybe the girls weren't motivated, maybe he just didn't have it in him anymore. I didn't know how to respond. What do you even say to someone who's slowly watching their life fall apart? I wanted to tell him to pack it all up, cut his losses, and head back to the UK. Start fresh. But I knew he wouldn't listen. He was too far in, too stubborn, too afraid to admit that the dream was already dead. The truth? I felt useless. I wasn't going to bankroll him. I wasn't about to start loaning him cash I knew I'd never see again. All I could do was show up once in a while and keep him company, while everything around him slowly crumbled. By then, the bar had become more of a prison than a business. Something he was stuck in, just trying to hold together with duct tape and cheap rum. And every time I walked away at the end of the night, I wondered if that was the last time I'd see him behind that counter. One night, I dropped by the bar again. Not because I was looking to have fun, but because I hadn't seen Rob in a few days and had this weird feeling. When I got there, the place was even more dead than usual. No girls, no customers. Just Rob behind the bar, sitting in the dark with a single light on above him. He didn't even look up when I walked in. I sat down and asked if everything was all right. He just stared at the bottle in front of him, then finally looked at me and said, "You're not going to believe what happened this week." Apparently, one of the girls he hired had a boyfriend. Something Rob didn't know until the guy stormed into the bar drunk, yelling, accusing Rob of taking advantage of her. Said he was going to come back with people if Rob didn't back off. Rob was rattled. After that night, the girl never came back, and 2 others left with her. He tried to find replacements, but no one wanted to work at a place with no foot traffic, no tips, and no promise of actual income. The few girls who did stay barely showed up anymore. The bar was crumbling from every angle. He looked me in the eyes and said, "I think I'm done, man. I can't do this again." That night was different. He wasn't drunk and shouting or putting on a face. He was just quiet. Calm, even. Like someone who'd already accepted the end. A few days passed and I heard nothing from Rob. Then one night, I went to my regular bar, the one I always visit first when I land in Manila, and one of the old expat guys I'd befriended waved me over. "You heard what happened to Rob?" he asked. I already knew it wasn't going to be good. He told me Rob had finally been picked up by immigration. Someone must have reported him, or maybe they were just doing a sweep. Either way, they found him, took him in, and gave him a choice. Pay the overstay fines or get deported. Of course, Rob didn't have a single cent to his name. But to my surprise, and honestly, to my respect, a couple of expats who knew him from way back, guys who had drank with him when times were good, pooled some money together to help him out. Enough to pay the fines and book him a flight back to London. When I heard that, something in me softened. No matter how deep he'd fallen, there were still people willing to help him get up. That says something. I didn't get to see him before he left. No final drink, no handshake, no goodbye. He just disappeared, the same way he showed up in my life. Quietly, out of nowhere. Months later, I got curious and tried looking him up on Facebook. Nothing, no profile, no update. Just gone. Eventually, I reached out to one of the guys who had helped with the ticket, and he gave me Rob's number. I shot him a message, not expecting a reply, but he answered. Said he was back in the UK sleeping on a friend's couch, working in a warehouse, long shifts, boring job. But he was saving. Paying back the people who helped him. Getting his life in order. He even joked, "At least I have hot water now." For the first time in years, he sounded stable. I told him I was proud of him, and I was. For a while, we kept in touch. Just quick updates, checking in here and there. Nothing deep, just the kind of casual chat you have with someone who went through hell, but somehow crawled back. But then, silence. Weeks passed, then months. I figured maybe he'd moved on. Maybe found someone, started a new chapter, and wanted to leave that whole Manila mess behind. I didn't blame him if that was the case, but when I returned to the Philippines again about 8 or 9 months later, I ran into one of the old regulars at my usual bar in Makati. I asked about Rob, expecting to hear he was rebuilding, maybe even coming back for a visit. What I got instead was something I wasn't ready for. He looked at me for a long second before saying, "You didn't hear?" I shook my head. He exhaled, then said it straight. Rob was gone. Not just back to the UK, gone, gone. I didn't understand at first, but then he said it. Rob had taken his own life. It felt like the bar went silent around me. I just sat there, not knowing what to say, not knowing how to process it. I knew he had his demons, we all do. But I guess I hoped that he was past the worst of it. Apparently, after losing his job back in the UK and falling into another hole of debt and stress, he just couldn't see a way out. And this time, no one could catch him. I sat there in that bar for what felt like hours, just replaying everything. Every drink we had, every night we laughed, every time I saw that shift in his eyes, from hopeful to hollow. I know people say he brought it on himself. And yeah, sure, he made some awful choices. He ignored every warning sign, chased a dream that was never real, and gambled everything he had on people who never cared about him the way he cared about them. But man, Rob was human. A good guy with a big heart. Too big, maybe. He believed in second chances, in the idea that if you just gave enough time, money, love, eventually it would all come back around. It didn't. Instead, it chewed him up and spat him out. I wish I'd done more. I wish I'd told him to come back sooner. I wish I'd told him the truth earlier. That this place isn't going to save you. Not if you're already sinking inside. Now, every time I come back here, I can't walk past those bars in Ermitato or Makati without thinking of Rob. The way he'd wave me down. The way he used to light up when we talked about the next big idea. And how that light slowly faded over time. This story, it's not just about warning others. It's my way of honoring him. Flawed, stubborn, kind-hearted Rob. So if you're out there chasing that same fantasy, take a step back. Make sure you're not losing yourself along the way. Rest in peace, brother. You'll be missed. Okay, guys, that's it for today's story. It wasn't an easy one to tell, and honestly, it's still heavy even now. Some of you watching might have known someone like Rob, or maybe you are someone like Rob. Someone who came to the Philippines, or anywhere abroad, chasing peace, fun, maybe even love, but ended up losing more than they ever expected. If this story hit, take a moment in the comments. Let me know your thoughts, and if you've got a story of your own, even if it's short, you already know where to send it. The email is on the screen right now. journalsbeyondhorizons@gmail.com. Whether it's about love, heartbreak, regret, or just something crazy that happened while you were traveling. Every story helps someone out there think twice or feel less alone. Big thanks again to everyone who listens, who shares, and who supports these uploads. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button. New stories are coming every other day, and trust me, they get even more intense. Until next time, stay safe, stay smart, and never lose yourself chasing someone else's dream.